present day, it isn't uncommon to hear about third, fourth, or even fifth generation ranchers. On this episode of Homegrown, we start season 2 on the Shaw family ranch. Let's just dig into it. So we're here at the Shaw Ranch with Les Shaw. Tell me a little bit about how your family came to be right here and just next to White Owl, South Dakota.
Well, my great-grandpa James came from Ireland with his son, his oldest son, Tom, and he came in the late 1800s, and he ended up in Waubay around 1897, 96, and he made his way this way after he met his wife, Isabel. They came over just north of the place here, about 3 miles, and they homesteaded.
Right.
They made a log cabin and they lived up there a while. They started renting this place here at White Owl about 1900, and in 1903 they bought it, and about 1905 they moved down here finally, and they lived in a canvas tent for a year or so, and then they built a house. And my grandpa Les came along in 1900, and then my dad came along, and my dad and mom, Jim and Kathy. My grandpa and grandma were Les and Agnes. And there's Jim and I are the fourth generation here on this place, and we each have families. Jimmy's married to Jody, and they have 4 kids. And Ann and I have 2 kids. That's kind of a abbreviated version.
So I just can't imagine that, coming over here in the 1800s and build a little log cabin, living in a tent. I mean, it's hard living here right now with modern day conveniences for an entire year. Can you imagine that, living in how tough them guys were?
It was a tough country. I can't imagine it. My grandpa would tell some stories of when he was a kid. My great-grandpa James learned to talk Lakota Sioux, and he traded with the Indians here and was friendly with them, and they just were nomadic. They'd cruise through, and everything was against you in those days. Weather, you didn't have equipment like you do now, and if you didn't make it, there were no social programs to save you. The ending wasn't going to be good if you didn't put enough food on the table or put up enough feed for your cattle. Yeah, this year with the drought conditions and the grasshoppers, the grass, the lush green grass, the downy stuff down in there isn't there this year, and so it's really affected these steer calves. They're probably going to be at least 50 pounds light, I would say, this fall. It's not a good thing. It's not fun. It keeps you up at night. As a kid, my dad was always involved in the fire department, was on the board and stuff, and they always did such a good job. I never thought fire could get out of hand. And then in 2003, we had a bad one, White Owl. It was 2003, right, Jim? And that was a huge fire. And then another time, we lost a man, and that shook everybody pretty hard. I never knew, with all the sprayers and all the equipment, road blades and discs and stuff, that it could get that dangerous that quick.
I never thought we couldn't put one out. Right. You find out that you can't.
Yeah. Well, I was the same way growing up. We would burn the ditches or whatever, or garden after the season and all that, and I always, like a lot of kids, you like playing with it and making, or a campfire, and sometimes, people don't think about the services that grazing does, but that really mitigates your fire hazard.
Great point.
I mean, and I don't think people realize that enough, whether it be out here on the prairie or up in, an allotment up in the Black Hills. If we have proper grazing, we reduce the fire load, the old stale stagnant grass, and we keep the grass greener. I mean, it's just a win-win, and that grazing is the only thing that can do that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like mowing your lawn in front of your house. If you never cut it, it's going to grow up, it's going to get old and crusty and a lot more fire ready, and it's not going to be nearly as thick and lush, and grazing comes and does that. And I think that's
and don't get me wrong, CRP is a good thing, but you get a fire, and when it hits CRP, you just pull back, because there's no sense in going in on that, because you're not going to stop it in that stuff when you've got 5 years of old growth and it's waist high in there.
You can almost see them stop on property lines from different management, guys that were grazing, guys that weren't, and maybe it's not properly or improperly, but they had grazed this one just previously in this pasture they hadn't, and it'll stop.
Exactly.
Well, we always got along real well. I mean, even as kids, we kind of just did everything together. And I mean, there's been a couple go to the ground deals, but always get over it and move on. And our families are really tight. I mean, we've gone on vacations together even, and we have learned that on your days off, maybe it's best just to kind of hang off by yourself a little bit, you know, a little time away is good too, so, but we've always got along really well.
Like you said, every generation, my great grandpa, we were blessed that he found this place, and I feel very blessed to live here. Like you said, I wake up in the morning and I'm proud of it. It's a great way to raise your family and be with your kids every day of the week, and they get to go to work with you when they're home from school. And it's a great way of life, but it's not necessarily a great way to make a living.
Yep. It's been said that behind every successful rancher is a wife who works in town. But we're about to meet Ann Shaw, and while she doesn't necessarily work in town per se, we're about to see what keeps her busy, helping out around the ranch, being the owner and operator of White Owl Creek Boutique, and still finding time to keep Les in line. You, like many of us, married way out of your league. Ann's a heck of a gal.
And so just your coverage, as they say.
Absolutely, you outkicked your coverage. But how did you meet Ann, and how did that all get started?
Ann and I met at her sister's wedding, actually.
My sister was marrying the neighbor boy, and I was a bridesmaid, and Les was at the wedding.
I like to say she stalked me from then on, but we both know better. Now it was meant to be. I was 28 when we got married. I had waited a while and met just the right person, and I'm very lucky and blessed to have found her.
And now a beautiful family with...
Yes, two lovely girls, Katie, who is 22, and she is a fourth-year nursing student at Augustana. And Kylie is going to be a sophomore. She is 19, and she will be pre-vet at SDSU.
We're talking a little bit about the history of just this building. You said, late 1800s, early 1900s. So how long have you guys had it, and what have you all done to make it look like it does today?
So 15 years ago, it was my dream to own the store. That kind of progressed into a lot of patience and waiting and timing, and I am 100% that God has perfect timing.
Sure.
And so a year and a half ago, we were able to purchase the store. And from there, we have completely cleaned up, painted, renovated, and tried to do it justice to what we felt like it could look like back then, and be updated to what we needed for now.
Right.
So
You've met her. She's fearless. She has no fear. She'll tackle any task and do anything. There's times that, my God, I wish she had some fear in her. I wish she'd go in a little bit more prepared. But no, that's the way she is, and it's been a great thing.
It's just such a testament to that. I mean, how she's come through her accident and recovered, and has still just stayed such a busybody, moving forward with her business and helping with everything around here. I think it's pretty awesome.
January 2nd, we opened, and enjoying and getting used to all the new down here. April 3rd, I had a horse accident and broke my pelvis in 3 places and fractured my back, which completely took me down to a place I've never been before and not used to at all. And so I have never been more thankful to have somebody be able to run my store, be here every day. Between Jody and Chastity Jones, who is the postmaster, she could help customers and run the store side of it, which I would not have been able to do otherwise.
So when was that accident?
April 3rd.
And so, I mean, we're just a few months from that.
We are.
And, you know, walking in here, I'd never have guessed that had I not known that earlier. You look great, everything. How has that affected
Everything is healing. Of course, not as fast as I want, even though when I stop and think about it, it hasn't been that long, but it's been long enough for me.
Yeah.
And yeah, just pushing my limits and figuring out every day something new I can do or things I shouldn't do as well. So
yeah. Well, it's just great that there's, you know, we've seen that time and again with these other little communities of people, when in need, people just show up, they step up and they help out.
Yes.
And probably for no actual benefit of their own whatsoever than just to help neighbors. And I think that's just one of the great common things you see in these little towns.
I put a lot of work, my brother and my dad. I learned a lot from my grandpa and dad about genetics, and my brother and I AI'd for a lot of years, and we put a lot of time, money, and effort into getting the genetics in these to where we have them now. And yeah, disposition's just a part of that, and I'm pretty proud of them. I am.
The life of a ranch wife is not quite as glamorous as some might think. I mean, you expect there's just some pretty big expectations on them that they do a lot of behind the scenes work.
Invaluable.
Yeah. Yep. So what was that like, you know, for a lot of your lifetime doing the behind the scenes work? And
I always enjoyed it. I have to admit that. I enjoyed haying, you know, out in the hayfield. I didn't mind it a bit. I was never much of a horsewoman, so I didn't do that much, but I enjoyed working with the machinery, helping Jim fence. I was probably more of a gopher than a fencer, but and I did a lot of staples, the little things, and I loved it. I loved being able, and I was fortunate in that I didn't have to work away from home, other than the first 3 years when I did teach. And we'd bundle the kids up with us and take them whatever we were doing, unless Grandpa and Grandma Shaw were handy, and then sometimes they did stay with Grandpa and Grandma, but a good share of the time they went along with us.
communication, grit, and sometimes sacrifice often come with the territory out on the ranch. Coming up, Les and I discuss effective fire management practices and also working with them cute but oftentimes pesky prairie dogs. So, you know, coming from, you know, folks in town that just think prairie dogs are kind of cool and harmless little critters, you know, why do we need to try to control them? Why do we, and how does that help ranchers?
If they're left unchecked, they'll take everything. They don't distinguish any type of foliage. They eat everything but some of the weeds, and there will be nothing left for cattle. And with the high property values and purchase price of ground and the taxes you're paying on this ground, and then going out, we lease other ground as well. And when we're going out and paying lease on ground and then letting prairie dogs have this for nothing, it doesn't make economic sense. You've got to manage them. Like you said, you'll never get rid of them, but if you can keep them in check, you can coexist with them a little bit.
Go to Pier a lot, you're in Rapid City a lot, you're traveling the country, but that's not easy either. What can you tell us about that?
I always kind of wanted to do something like this. I felt a call to do it, you know. I think everybody should at one point, but Yeah, I want to reiterate. I think everyone should get involved at a certain point in life, whether it's for 10 years or 2 or 1, whatever. Just step up, and the reward in what you learn is invaluable. Your expectations won't even put a shadow on what this is. You couldn't touch it. I don't know when it's going to be over, when I decide to not do it anymore, but right now I enjoy it. I feel like I'm starting to make a difference in some areas with the groups I'm with. The stock growers love the group. You bet.
So we're in the middle of a pretty serious drought. You know, out in the pastures, it's pretty bleak. There's not a lot of grass. There's not a lot of hay. I mean, you were telling me just out here how little hay you guys got this year. I mean, how do you deal with that? I mean, what's that like?
Well, it's a tough one this year for sure. It's probably the toughest I've seen. You know, that 03 through 07, those years were tough, and they kind of just kept building and building, and it dug into your reserves. We bought a lot of hay then, but the pastures weren't as tough a shape as they are now. We're going to see some light calves. We're going to see 50-pound lighter steers, I'm sure, this year. It's that the grasshoppers are taking that good downy calf grass, and then it's kind of a perfect storm. Jim and I decided to keep more calves last year. We backgrounded almost everything, and so we burnt through our reserves more than what we wanted to, and that is putting us behind the 8 ball a little this year, and we're having to go back out and buy this hay this year. And it's a dog eat dog world out there in this hay market, and it's tough. I never thought I'd see hay where it's priced right now. And when you see cattails for $85 a ton, it blows my mind. But I don't know. It's not the first one. I tell myself this is my pep session. I tell myself every morning, not the first one. It's not going to be the last. You make it through. It's not going to be fun, but you just do. That's what we do. That's what we chose, and that's what we do. And put your head down, you pull your hat on tight, and you just hang on.
Why don't you talk a little bit? We're out here in the middle of nowhere, but yet you still have a fire extinguisher. We talked a little bit about fire.
We're pretty sensitive to fire, like we talked earlier in this country, and when you leave the buildings or whatever in an outfit at any time, you've got to have some sort of a fire extinguisher, shovel. We pack these wet fire extinguishers around in our outfits and on our haying equipment, and they're a great sense of security, and for not a lot of money, that's a really good insurance from a real big blow-up disaster.
And they're fully rechargeable. All you got to do is put air and water in them, so a person's not scared to use them.
Oh, so it's not like
one and done. All you do is fill it with water and pump it up with compressed air, and they're ready to go.
Yeah, that's kind of so. Say you smell something, you smell some smoke or something on your four-wheeler,
just spray
let
it.
her have it. Let her have it, and recharge it. That's all there is to it.
Excellent.
My ultimate dream is that this building can become a place where other women can show off the work that they do in the country. So I've been a hairstylist for 27 years. I've owned the boutique for 8. Jody, for instance, has done her artwork. I want this place to bring all those people together and celebrate what other parts of the ranch life that we have. We're working on a lot of South Dakota made items currently, so that'll be something that's coming. I think there's a lot of different things evolving from what I have imaged in my head, what I want it to look like, and what it's looking like now. We're kind of in the in-between, so we have workshop space available up here, so we can do different workshops in the wintertime, I think. A lot of this has been kind of postponed. I had planned that we would do a lot of this summer, but that's not the way it's working out. So we're gonna do a better plan and have it all worked out so we can start doing that probably this winter.
Mom and Dad always made us, they would never allow you to bicker and fight. They never would allow it.
Yeah.
And it just wasn't going to happen. And it kind of carried on. And the one thing I can say that a lot of people always ask us that same question: how do you get along, and how do you know your role and everything? And we try to sit down almost every morning. And it might be 5 minutes, it might be an hour or better. But you discuss what your plans for the day are, and what your attack is, what the concerns you have, the things that you see that really need to be addressed, and then you make a battle plan and you do that together. You don't go in with some preconceived notion that, okay, well, this is what we're going to do, and then when he says, well, I think we should do this, and you're out in the middle of it, that's conflict, and it's not going to work. And there's sacrifice too.
Sure.
We're a family corp, and do you want it to work or do you want it to go apart?
Yeah.
And once in a while, you got to swallow it.
Yeah.
And that's just life.
Yeah.
That's working with anybody, whether it's family or not. I wouldn't trade it with anybody. He's the best partner I could ask for. He's been great.
Hey, Les, anything you want to say about your folks while they're on camera that you can embarrass them, or?
No, I guess, I just say thank you very much. Thanks for all you've done, all the sacrifices and everything.
They've been good boys too. They've been no trouble.
Well, maybe a little trouble.
Well, expect that.
Taylor rides just as well as any